All right, hi, welcome back. So what I have done was take my two illustration sets that I created within each of the class periods. I have an HP camera, so I have an app on my phone that allowed me to scan in my images so I didn't have to retrace them. And when I scanned in my image, I was then able to print them out on my printer so I can have some practice coloring before I do my final, which is a tip that I might suggest if you have access to and you're able to scan or make a copy of your drawing. So I'm going to start. I actually have this printed onto cardstock, which if your lines are nice and clean and they came out black like this, you could probably just print yours onto cardstock and then begin coloring. So I'm going to use my Prismacolor colored pencils to start to add color and value into my drawing. You can practice, but I'm just going to think more like a denim color jean that she's wearing, like a dark denim. So when I want to start with a dark denim, I want to use the navy blue colors. The white, I'm going to do a little white wash with a white colored pencil. And I'm also going to have a lighter blue color underneath. So I can kind of get this like indigo kind of worn, almost like an acid wash. So I just picked out 4 colors that I'm going to try to use, and I'm just going to start with the lightest color. Remember, you want to build up light layers of color. Okay, so I'm going to start with my lightest color first, and I am going to go in the direction that the body would be covered. So my clothing would be going around my body. So I am going to start. I can fill in a small area of border buffer zone because I do want to make sure that this stays nice and clean. And I want to be careful with my color. So I need to make sure that I'm getting an even coverage. But my color should be, and my line mark should be going in the direction of the fabric and how it would be laying on the body. Okay, so what you want to avoid is making sure that you're not trying to fill in the whole thing at once, but that you are getting your lines and your strokes next to each other so that you are getting a nice even color all the way through. I know this might sound silly, but you'll see why I'm starting with a light color and I'm going to build up a layer of colors, and that will help me create the form or render a 3D form as I'm working. I know it's very hard to see the light color, but trust me, it's there. So I'm going to start, again, I'm going to kind of just give myself a little border as I'm going down the leg. And then I'm going to work across in the direction that the fabric would be stretching around my leg. So one thing we haven't had a chance to really talk about is form and understanding how values and shades work because of our limited time in class. So we're going to try to do that through these videos and get some understanding of value and shading. Okay, so I've done one light layer. I'm going to move this color out of the way real quick. And now I'm going to go back in another direction just to make sure that I have filled it up as much as I can. And that I don't have a lot of whites showing through because I really do need this light color blue as I'm working. Okay, now I'm going to move forward to my next color that's a little bit darker. So I've done my light color. Now I'm going to move on to my slightly darker color. So again, always make sure that your colored pencils are sharpened. They will last longer. Also, friendly tip, try not to let them fall off and break on the floor. Anytime they drop, the graphite that's in the inside cracks. And that's why if you're sharpening and you find yourself sharpening and the lead keeps breaking, it's because it's been cracked throughout. It's maybe dropped or wiggled a little bit. I am going to do a light color with this, what it's called, peacock blue, all the way throughout as well, but I'm going to kind of focus more on the edges. And I know this looks like it's a little bit of a brighter color, so what I would do is recommend is test your colors before you commit. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go back up. I am going to use this color. I am going to layer over other colors over top of it still. So it's not going to be this blue unless I decide I really want this like nice peacock green or peacock blue kind of color for my outfit, which you might. You can change your mind as you're working, and that's okay. Again, I'm using my Prismacolor colored pencils, and I'm just trying to take small sections at a time, going the same direction first with the same amount of pressure. If you find yourself putting a little bit too much pressure on and you end up with these streaks like this, it's okay. Just go back in. You can use the lighter color or a darker color. Right now I'm just trying to get an even color so I have something to work with as I start to blend my colors together. Also, as you get to the edge, you want to make sure you have a nice crisp edge. It's kind of hard to see here, but if I were to lift this up, you can see that the edge is kind of uneven and it kind of looks a little unclear. So I'm going to rotate. I'm going to lift up towards my tip of my colored pencil. And slowly start to fill that back in to make sure that I had a nice even pressure all the way throughout. And then I'm going to make sure that same color is on this side. This leg that's going behind, it's also going to be slightly darker because it is behind the other leg. And that's going to be important to kind of keep in mind as well. So I'm kind of having a nice tight space to work with the camera edge and the materials in the space I have. So give yourself a nice big area to work in so you can move your papers around and work with things like that as well. So I'm just trying to make sure I get back into that little corner. All right, now I'm going to move on to my darker. So before I move on, I want to think about where my light source is. And in this case, I'm going to have my light source come from the top right corner, which means the whole right side of the body is going to be lighter than the left side. But also, it's important to note that my the leg that's going behind is going to be slightly darker as well. So I'm going to start with the bottom, and I am just going to fill in this color at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that the back leg is slightly darker before I do anything else. So this leg is going behind the other leg. So that means this whole leg needs to be darker first before I go on. So I'm just taking a nice light color and adding that to this piece because the light again is coming from this side, which means this whole piece is going to be slightly darker as it moves behind. So I want to get that extra layer in before I do anything. Now I'm going to go ahead and start to build up these colors again. I think I might need a darker blue-gray as well, so I'm going to have to look through a color and see if I can find maybe indigo blue. And as I want to work with my indigo blue, I can see, I'm going to test that out real quick with a nice sharp pencil and see if that will kind of deepen this color. And I think I like that color a little bit more. So I'm going to take this indigo blue and I'm just putting it on the outside edge, lightening up the pressure to the center to help kind of get that rounded form. Same with on the side. I'm going to take my pressure a little bit more on the edge, lightening it up and fading it towards the center to almost no pressure. What that's going to give me is a little bit of a shadow going away, and it's your choice at how much you want to add. And underneath this whole leg back here is going to be a little bit darker, and I'll add some darker color in a minute. Okay, so I did that on the side. So already you can see right now that some value is starting to happen where you're seeing it darker on the side and a little bit lighter over here. So I'm going to rotate my paper, and I need to add that to the leg over here. So the inner leg, This one is actually going behind. So again, I need to make sure that this has a little bit more of the darker color because it's behind this other leg. And it's going to lighten as it gets to the center. But I still want to keep that center nice and light. In here where these little creases and folds are, I also want to make sure I get some nice lines that are going that same direction. And I'm just going to put a really nice light, even pressure all the way across the top. Now, this part of the pant is underneath this cardigan. So it is going to be slightly darker because the light is being blocked, but we don't want to make it too dark. So I'm going to make sure my pencil is nice and sharp, get a nice point, and lift my pencil up so it's on that point so I can get it really close to that line, and then start to fade that in towards the center as well. Okay, and I can go back in with maybe my Copenhagen blue and add just a little bit more of that color in those creases. And I can still go back in and add another color if I wanted to lighten that color up. Now, the back is pretty set, but this front leg is still a little bit on the lighter side. Because I use this Copenhagen blue on the back leg, I'm not going to add it really onto the front leg, but I am still going to use the indigo blue. So when I add my indigo blue, I'm going to just lightly go along the edges. So I want to think about the form, and I want to think about lightening it up towards the center so I can still get this cylindrical form of my leg, where it would make sense that the leg is going around and behind. Okay, so I'm just going to lighten that up as it goes. Where I have these little curves for the knee and the calves, I still do need to make those a little bit darker as well. So now I'm going to do it on the other side. You can rotate your paper so it's a little bit easier, or if you're more confident and you have a lot of experience, you can just keep your paper in the same direction. Okay, so what I've done is created the leg, and I'm going to go back over here because it does have a little bit of a hidden area underneath here. Okay, I can add a deeper shadow by pressing a little bit harder on the point and clarifying that edge back here, lightening it up. Don't be afraid of the contrast. So that contrast is kind of key to really showing and showcasing the form. So let's say these are all really bright and I want to lower some of the intensity, which I can do. I can either add a darker blue, or I can go back in with this complement color, which in this case is an orange, where I can lower some of that intensity. So I don't really want a bright orange, but I might take this color orange, and on the inside leg, where it's the farthest away from the latch, right around the crotch line, I'm going to make this a deeper color, because this would be where the color would be most shaded. There's not going to be a lot of value, and there's not a lot of brightness because it's the farthest away from the light. Okay, so I know it looks a little funny at first, but it's going to help add to that contrast. So I'm very light pressure, not adding too much, and I'm going to do it on the very outside edge as well, because this leg, like I said, is the farthest from our drawing. So I'm going to pull some lines from the side into this space as well. And I know it might be scary, but you do really want to try to get some of these values in there and lower that intensity so that it does read a little bit more realistic for you. All right, part 2, back. Let's say you're adding your colors and you think you added too much orange. The simple solution is not to panic. It's going to be okay. Just remember the leg farthest from the light is already in a natural shadow. Okay, so you're going to have that natural shadow, especially when it's down here, it's going to be the deepest. So it doesn't mean you have to press really hard with the orange, it just means you apply a little bit more. Now I'm going to take those colors back that I was using, so where did my blue indigo go? Make sure I have a nice sharper pencil, and I can go back over the color to kind of blend in that orange a little bit more so it doesn't stand out as much as it was. Okay, so I'm just making sure that I have a nice clean, crisp line. I still want that light color, and I will go back over and make sure that light color is there in a few minutes. But I want to make sure that I have this nice lower intensity area to help really show the form of the body. The key is light pressure and a lot of layers. Okay, you can't try to do it all at once, it just won't work very well. All right, so let's say we're done with that, and I added all the layers that I wanted to do. There is a tool that is a colorless blender that you can purchase. They're about like maybe $2 or $3. You can go to Michael's and buy them, or Joann's, or buy them online. What this is pigmentless. So it's just the wax. And so what this allows you to do is, as you're working, once you get all your layers, if you go over, it pushes all the pigment that's on your paper into the white spaces. And it's polishing and burnishing your piece. So it almost now looks like a painting or something that would be done on with watercolor or a paint that way. Okay, so it's getting rid of, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but see that white area? It's just pushing the pigment that's already on my paper into that space. So I'm just going back and forth slowly. And the best part about this is even once after you add the colorless blender and you blended all your colors, you can still go back in and add more layers. There will be a point where your paper is just saturated with all the colored pencil and you won't be able to add any more, but you'll be surprised at how many layers you can actually add before that happens. So now I'm going to go back over in the other leg, and I'm just pushing and pulling the color. Notice my leg, my cylindrical form, I'm going vertical, so I'm pulling from top to bottom. Even when I added my strokes really with the direction of my leg, because it is a cylinder, which means the highest point of the cylinder closest to me is going to be the one that's the lightest. So I'm just going to blend that color into that cuff down there, even though I didn't have anything there. Making sure that I blend each leg separately than the previous one. All right, so now I'm going to move on. I'm going to color in the blouse, and I think the blouse is going to be white. Now, if I want to leave something white, I can, but I need to think about what tints of colors that I can use to apply. So I might use some light blues along with the different cool grays. So there are warm grays and then there are cool grays. And I want to make sure that I'm using the cool grays, the grays that have more of a bluish undertone as opposed to ones that have more of a red or brown. So in my Prismacolor set, I'm using a 20% gray, 70%, 50%, and then I'm going to use this little bit of a blue vintage white. Even though it's white, I want to make sure that I use this like solid, like kind of a blue area just to kind of add to keep that color tone that I want in my drawing. And again, I know that not everyone has Prismacolors at home. You can go to the store if you want, and you can buy Prismacolors independently. But again, colored pencils and your Crayola colored pencils in 8 count will do the same exact thing. You just vary the pressure that you're applying. So again, I'm going to start with the lightest colors. And in this case, I'm going to start with my 20% cool gray. And I'm going to do one even layer of my 20% cool gray on this cami that I have underneath here. So I'm going to start right up against the edge. I'm going to kind of give myself a border just so I don't have to worry about going into that space. And then I'm going to work down. Now I do have a white colored pencil, and you're probably wondering, why aren't you just using white? I could use white, but when you think about a white t-shirt, or the next time you're wearing a white t-shirt, look at it. It's not always white with the folds of the fabric. So I can always go back in and add some white on top of my colors, but there are going to be areas and times where they have more of a gray tone, or maybe even a yellow if it's reflecting something next to yellow. Okay, I've added my 20% gray. Now I'm going to take my 50% gray, which is slightly darker, and on my side farthest from the light, I'm going to make this darker. So I'm going to only use the 50% color on that side for right now. Now I get that the whole t-shirt is underneath the cami, but it's still going to be light. And because I already put that gray in there, it's already slightly tinted and darker than it would be if it was just a white shirt. So I am going to just kind of lightly fade it towards the center from left to right. So more pigment on the left, less pigment on the right. So you can see how it's starting to kind of look a little bit darker off to the side. Now remember, females, we have chest tissue, so I am just going to kind of put that little form in where the breast or the apex would be. So I'm going to just kind of shade in a little bit on the top by kind of making this almost like a W that's like kind of cut off, and fading it. Like if I had an orb, I would be going around the outside of the circle, fading it down. This is going to be a little bit darker underneath here too, just because of the way light fits and hits. But a very subtle way to just kind of put in and show some value. I am going to take my darker gray, and I'm just going to apply a little bit on the outside edge, just so I can get some wrinkles, some creases. You can use some line work. I don't want to put a lot of pressure in, but I'm just trying to get a little bit of that shadow and that darker form. Now, that's when I'm going to go back in with my cool white, or actually in this case it's cloud blue, and I'm just going to go over everything with my cloud blue. So I want it to have this nice kind of frosty blue kind of white to it instead of like the paper white. Almost like a silvery kind of thing. Again, if you feel like you need to sharpen, please do. Notice I've sharpened my pencils quite a lot. It's easier to do that than wait for them to get down to a blunt tip and then have to go back in and sharpen over and over and over again. So I'm just adding that color in, changing directions as I go to make sure I get a nice even coverage, and it's all the way up until every line that I need. So I can add more in the center if I want. I can take my white colored pencil and add some highlighted areas by going into the white area. So where the highest point of the shirt would be, I can add a little bit of white. It's not going to show up too much because my color is light, but I can still add that color in. And then take that colorless blender and blend those colors. So that you get a nice even coverage. So I think this color right over here underneath this shirt should be a slightly darker color, so I am going to go back in and just add a little bit of a darker gray there because it is behind the cami. And I'm going to make some uneven lines just kind of going around because it would be kind of like hanging loose. So I just want to kind of blend that and make those lines kind of more transparent. And just keep working until you think you've gotten to a point where you're happy with the way the shirt looks and makes sense from a distance. Now moving on to the cami, I think I might do a pattern on this one. And so I think I'm going to do a tan color with some brown and orange, like kind of like stripes like a plaid cami. So I'm going to start by picking out some tan, beige, neutral colors that I think will work well. And I don't really know. I'm just going to try this. So I'm going to first start with the beige. Okay, so I'm going to start with a beige. And I'm going to color this cami in with the beige. So I decided to go with a beige because I wanted something to be accenting or a piece that would stand out, like the focal point of this outfit, like what would make it unique. So I want a statement top. So I'm going to use this opportunity to kind of use these beiges, these warm creams and browns, to accent the blue, because remember blue and orange are complementary colors. And by doing that, I'm hoping that I'll get this nice kind of creamy color. I am going to do the pockets as well. When I do the colors and the plaids and like the print that I'm going to put on it, I might do that in a different color. So I'm going to flip this over and do the opposite side. Remember the side that I'm working on right now, which is also the side farthest from the light. Is going to be darker. So when I get done with this, I'm going to take a slightly darker version of the colored pencil and kind of deepen this so it's a little bit darker, makes a little bit more sense. The top of the shoulders are also going to be a little bit lighter and it's going to get darker as it moves down naturally. The underside of the arms are also going to be darker than the outer edge of the arm because they would be closer to your body and therefore are naturally in shadow. Sorry. Don't forget to do the inside. If you have something inside that you're seeing. And then if you need to go back in and build up color, you can do that again with another layer if you think it's too light. Just make sure whatever direction you go, your entire stroke mark goes in that same direction until you're done with that layer to do that nice buildup of color. Okay, so now I have that one. I'm going to need to find another color, so maybe a light brown this time. I might actually try this French gray to kind of take away some of the bright orangeness of this. I feel like this feels a little orange, especially now that it's compared to the blue. So I'm going to use this French gray, which is a warm gray. All right, so what I did was just add some French gray in the dark area back here. That could be where it could add some black, but I think it's dark enough the way it is. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to go back in on this side and add some darker French gray on the inside edge of that arm and blend that out. Just add some natural wrinkles and folds where the fabric would naturally be in shadow. It kind of looks like to me that this kind of has like a natural like dent and shadow here, so I'm just going to put that in and phase that out. Might do that on the pocket this way as well. And for the trim, I'm going to do this really dark edge trim, so I'm going to use just one with a heavy pressure to go back in and just kind of get this brown or French gray like border. Going all the way up. I'm going to do the same on the cuff. Remember, the cuff also has some value, so even though I'm working, I still want to make sure that I get the darker values. And I think I'm going to do this for the shoe down here too. I'm going to do the darker color through the center, make the toe this dark color as well. And then use the lighter French gray so that the shoe kind of matches. And then I'm going to need to put in that peach kind of color to kind of give it that warmer, orangey, kind of like suede feel. All right, I could take my clear blender if I have it, or again, I could just use a light color. The blenders are my favorite. You can get a pack of 10 for really kind of cheap. But if you're serious about illustration, you might want to invest in a few. They just make it a lot easier, and it changes like the whole concept of illustration and working with colored pencil. Kind of cleans and polishes up the whole look. So I'm going over everything that I just added with the Clearview colorless blender. Making sure I have some pieces lighter so I don't have to have a nice even flat color everywhere. I do want to have some value. Down into my shoe. Whatever just arrived, my doggy's not happy because she's growling. And then all that would be left to do is the belt, and I could maybe color this like a suede colored belt, but I'm going to add a little bit more of a brightness to it. So I'm going to do a little bit of yellow with the French gray 20%. So it's slightly different, not quite the same. Blend those colors, see what happens. And there you go, a finished illustration using colored pencils with proper value, so it makes it a little bit more polished and clean looking.